asked the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, Ya Rasulullah, he says, who's the best person? He said, the best person is the person with the longest life and the best deeds. And who is the worst person? The worst person, those who have long lives and bad deeds. So let's take life expectancy, right? So I study these things, Imam. I study life expectancy. I go to an almanac and I study life expectancy. So I asked myself the question, what is the average life expectancy of an average American? And the answer is 78.6 years. So the average American is expected to live 78.6 years. If you compare that with the other nations, United States is 45th on the list of the countries of the world, 45th, right? But that figure is misleading. If you ask the question, what's the life expectancy of the average black man in America, the average lifespan is not 78.6 years, it's 71.5 years. Can you imagine, having 7 years less of making salat or making hajj or siyam or ibadah or sadaqah, all of that worship, years less. So that when you look at black men, right, and you look at their life expectancy, is different. So if black men were a nation, black men in America were a nation, they wouldn't be 45th in the world, they'd be 111. When you look at the prison, let's say something about America. America is the third most populated nation in the world. Number one is China. 1,400,000,000 people in China. Number two, India. 1,300,000,000 people in India. The third most populated nation, United States. Like 325 million people, 325 million people. So when you take the population of America, we represent 5% of the total population of the world. United States represents 5% of the total population of the world. But yet they represent 25% of the total prison population in the world. How is it that we have 500,000 more prisoners than China? How's that possible? How's that possible? How is it possible that black people represent 12% of the population of America? We represent 12%. 40 million black people in America. We represent about 12% of the population of America, but we represent 33% of the prison population in America. These old black people, they're criminals. No. Black people are not criminals. No, they're not criminals. So we have to understand the structure. How come so many black people in prison? Does it have to do anything with the system? You bet it does. So the point is, we agree that there's some very, very serious problems. How long black people have been complaining about police brutality? Every person, and I bet you Imam Inshura has some story about police. Every black man that I know have some story about our interaction with the police. I remember, Imam, my first interaction with the police, I was 18 years old, a student at New York University. And one day, I'm standing in front of my building where I go to school, and I'm going to make a decision whether I should go to class tonight because there was going to be a demonstration, whether I'm going to join the demonstration or go to class or go back home. And a police officer, a white police officer, came to me and said, "Move on." I said, "I'm a student here." He said, "I said, move on." And he sent the police and arrested me. Took me to jail. I'm a student at the school. And while I'm there, Imam, one of the police officers, he takes the handcuffs off of me, takes his gun, put his gun on the desk and said, would you like to get that? Now, how many innocent black people have been murdered at the hands of the police? And so when the world saw George Floyd, when they saw with their own eyes him being murdered by a white police officer, the whole world changed. Massive protests, not just in America, for weeks, not just in America, around the world, all over the world, people protesting. Why? Why? Because now people are recognizing, people say, seeing is believing. And think about it. There's a tradition that the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said that Allah calls the angels and asks the angels, what are my slaves saying? What are my slaves? What are they saying? And the angels say, now when Allah asks a question, he don't ask the question because he don't know the answer. He asks a question to teach a lesson. يَقُولُونَ Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. They praise Allah. Allah asks them, how ra'awni? Do they see me? يَقُولُونَ لَا Wallahi, ma ra'awka. No, they don't see you. Allah said, what if they saw me? What if they saw me? Oh, if they saw you, they would be stronger in their worship to you. If they saw you, right? Allah asks the question, what are they asking for? يَسْأَلُونَكَ الْجَنَّةَ. They're asking for your paradise. How ra'awha? Do they see the paradise? يَقُولُونَ لَا. They don't see it. What if they saw it? What if they saw the hellfire? What if they saw it? And so when the world saw what was happening. Now I want to say this about people's statement, oh, it's not all police. You're right, it's not all police, right? There's some good police, yes. But to say that, you know, there's just a few, Allah knows best. But I tell you one thing also you witnessed that day is that what's called the blue wall of silence. A blue wall of silence, and that means silence. That means that there are police officers who see wrongdoing done by other police officers, and they say nothing. They see injustice, and they see nothing. Like there, 3 police officers. You know, Imam, there's one hadith is interesting that had they obeyed this one hadith, we wouldn't be like this right now. And the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said, Unsur akhaka zalimun am madhlumin. Help your brother if he is oppressed or an oppressor. So yeah, we know how to, we help him if he's oppressed, sure. How do we help him if he is an oppressor? He says, stop them from their oppression. And that's helping them. Had they stopped that police officer, no, what you're doing is wrong. You're killing that man and move him off of that man. But they won't do that. You know why? Because of the blue wall of silence. So what are we going to do about it? And this is just my introduction, Imam, to what I really want to say tonight. What are we going to do as Muslims? Someone asked the question, what will be the future of America? I'm sure everybody's asking, what's going to be the future of America? I have 2 answers. Answer number 1, what do you want it to be? You are, in Imam, we have several identities. You and I, we have several identities. Number 1, Ana Aswad. I'm black. Ana Amerikiyun. I'm American. Ana Afrikiyun. I'm African. Ana Bashar. I'm a human being. Ana Muslim. I'm a Muslim. We have all of these identities, and to me, all of them, the most important, Imam, I'm a Muslim. Why? Because although I love being black, I love being African, I love being American, I love being a human being, but the most important thing for me, I'm a Muslim. I'm a Muslim. Why? Because nobody will be in Jannah because of they're black. No one will be in hell because they're white. Inshallah, we'll be in Jannah because of our deeds, our good deeds, and Allah's mercy. And we'll be in hellfire because of our evil deeds and Allah's punishment on us. And indeed, the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said, Inna Allah ta'ala la yanduru ila asamikum wa la ila suwarikum wa lakin yanduru ila qulubikum wa a'malikum. Allah will not look at their bodies nor their forms, but he look at their deeds and their hearts. Now, you don't have to keep the Imam on me now. I'm finished with the Imam. I just wanted to ask him those questions. So now, so number 1 is, what do you want it to be? What's your vision for America? Number two, what are you going to do to bring about that vision? A man came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, mata sa'a? When is the hour? And the Prophet said, Ma'adatta laha. What did you prepare for it? You want America to be this wonderful nation, colorblind. You want the American people to love their former black slaves. Someone once sang a song, is that you can't make me love you if you don't. I can't make you love me. I can't make you love me. I can't make you love me as a black man. So the question today is, what are we going to do about it? I'm of the conclusion, Imam, that many of us have lost confidence. Many black people have lost confidence. Many Muslims have lost confidence. But the emergence of the Black Lives Matter has now emboldened a lot of people, not just black people, but emboldened a lot of people. So all over the world, you find people standing up, they want to do something. And so the question is, what do you want to do? Martin Luther King Jr. put it this way. He said, every man is either a thermometer or thermostat. Every man is either a thermometer or thermostat. What does the thermometer do? It measures the heat. It can tell you how cold it is. It can tell you how hot it is. But that's all it does. It registers. Like people complaining. Oh, look what they do to black people. That ain't right what they do to black people. That's a thermometer. But a thermostat is different. In a thermostat, if you're cold, you turn up the heat. If it's too hot, you turn it down. So that's a thermostat. So today, Muslims must be more than a thermometer, more than complaint. We have to be a thermostat. And finally, Imam, I'm going to read something for you. This is from a book called Militant Islam Reaches America by Daniel Pipes. Daniel Pipes is not a Muslim. And I want to show you something that he said, because I think part of our problem as Muslims in America is that many of us have lost confidence in what we have. And we follow everyone else except following what we have. And let me tell you what he said. This is a man who criticizes Islam, Daniel Pipes. He has written many articles criticizing Islam, but let me tell you what he said in this book called Militant Islam Reaches America, Daniel Pipes. Listen to what he said. Added to this internal confidence was the fact that Muslims enjoyed outstanding success during their first 6 or 7 sole centuries. To be a Muslim meant to belong to a winning civilization. This pattern of success started right at the beginning. In AD 622, Muhammad fled Mecca as a refugee, then returned there in 630 as its ruler. By the year 715, Muslim conquerors had assembled an empire that reached Spain in the west and India in the east. Muslims boasted some of the most powerful armies, the highest standards of living, the best health, and the most impressive rates of literacy, and the most impressive scientific advancements. In the words of Martin Kramer, an historian who said, had there been Nobel Prizes in 1000, they would have gone almost exclusively to the Muslims. Muslims have a very, very rich heritage. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? Finally, I'm almost finished. Let me share this with you. And, you know, there's a lot of argument among Muslims. Should we get involved in politics, for instance? Is that the answer? Is voting the answer? And I must admit to you, my brothers and sisters, 25 years ago, the average Muslim asked the question, is it even permissible for us to get involved in politics? I don't think that many Muslims are asking that today. We have a mandate by the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. He said, "Men ra'a minkum munkar falyughayyirhu biyadihi." Whoever sees an evil, let him change it. Let him change it with his hand. So we're given a mandate by the messenger of Allah, and really through Allah, because the Prophet doesn't speak out of his own mouth, but his revelation revealed. Then we see an evil, and this, I don't know anything worse than this insidious racism. Let him seize an evil, change it with his hand. But the Prophet is a realist. Sometimes you can't. You don't have the power to change it with your hands. So then he said, then change it with your tongue. You can speak about it. And even if you can't do it, then change it with your heart. With dhalika ta'aduful iman, and this is the weakest of faith. You can at least make dua. Have we made the dua? Have we attempted to change this racism? Almost there. Let me give you something to think about. How many black men, especially, even black women, have been unjustly murdered with impunity by police? It's so many we can't even count. And the thing about them is, over the years, very, very, very few of white police officers are ever held accountable for their crime. I don't know anyone who's saying that the murderer of George Floyd didn't do something reprehensible. Everybody says it, right? And we're looking for the day that there's going to be some justice. And really, there's some very serious charges against him. He can spend life imprisonment. He can even face the death penalty. I don't think that'll ever happen, but technically, theoretically, he can. Let me tell you about one of the few cases that a police officer was held accountable. Last year in Dallas, Texas, a white police officer by the name of Amber Geiger was charged with murder. She was indicted, charged of murder. She murdered a black man in his own apartment. She came into the apartment. She said she thought it was her apartment, and she shot to death a black man. And you know what? She was convicted. One of the few cases of a white police officer being convicted. Let me give you something to consider. This happened in Dallas, Texas. Let me give you some information about Dallas, Texas. Number one, the population of Dallas. 42% of the population is Hispanic. 29% is white. 24% is black. The mayor of Dallas, black. The police chief of Dallas, black. The Dallas County District Attorney, black. The judge who presided over the case, black. Of the 12 jurors and 4 alternatives, 7 of them black, 4 white, and 5 other races and ethnicities. You see, moving toward a political chance or a political process to bring justice. Is that the answer for the Muslims? It's part of it. But let me tell you my conclusion, how we're going to transform this country, make America better, make the world better. And the key was a question that the Prophet ﷺ asked 1400 years ago to one of his companions, Mu'adh bin Jabal. And this is the question I'm going to ask for you today. You're going to be a thermometer or thermostat. What are you going to do? How are we going to make America better? How are we going to end racism? You say, Imam, you can't make people love you. That's true. You can't. Or could you? Let me say what the Prophet said, and then I'll conclude, and then we have some conversation. يا معاذ أتدري ما حق الله على عبادي وما حق عبادي على الله. Mu'adh, do you know what right that Allah has over his slaves? And what right the slaves have over Allah? What a question. What a magnificent question. Rights? Allah has rights. Thomas Jefferson said, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So Thomas Jefferson talked about the rights of human beings. And so the Prophet is asking, what is Allah's right? And this is the key to everything that you want to do, is a recognition of Allah's rights. He says, Inna haqqa Allah ala ibadi an ya'buduhu wa la yushriku bihi shay'an. It is Allah's right by his slaves to be worshipped, and no one worship besides him. This is the absolute key. Inna haqqa ibadi Allah, and Allah's right and the right of the slaves over Allah, we have a right over him. If that we do this, we do not worship any gods besides him, we worship him and no gods besides him, our right is that Allah don't punish us. That's the key. The key is you gotta do it for Allah. Let's see. So here's the key. You see, brothers and sisters, don't ever underestimate this. We got a lot of problems here in America. See, if you get together, if we got together and we said, man, we're going to solve this problem of racism, it's a big problem. How you going to do it since you can't change people's heart? How you going to do it? How you going to change these people who are racist? Even just yesterday, I think it was, you got white officers, you know, there's some tapes, police officers talking about they want a race war. They want to slaughter black people. Why you want to slaughter black people? Why? How come you didn't want black people the right to vote? Can I tell you why you didn't want black people the right to vote? You go back in 1965 when the famous Selma to Montgomery marching. In 1965, only 600 black people in Dallas County, Alabama, were registered to vote. But when they had this famous march, 1965, by August, inshallah, alhamdulillah, President Johnson signed Voting Rights Bill of 1965. And by then, not just 600 blacks registered to vote, over 9,000 registered to vote, and they were able to vote that racist Jim Clark as the sheriff out of the Dallas County. So that it made a difference. So that's part of it. But we got a lot of problems. Like, for instance, you think that America have a drug problem? You bet. Can you imagine last year, over 70,000 Americans died of drug overdose? 70,000. 45,000 Americans committed suicide last year. On the average year, 480,000 Americans die from smoking cigarettes. Imagine, 40,000 Americans die every year secondhand smoke. They don't even smoke, but people around them smoke. Their mother, their father, their friends, they smoke, and the people they inhale and they die. According to the World Health Organization, by the end of the 21st century, if the nations of the world do nothing about it, 1 billion people would have died as a result of smoking cigarettes. So we have a lot of problems. How do you solve the drug problem? And this is the key. This is the key. Imam, Inshura, a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we were in Long Island where you were. And there was an African-American Muslim that was assaulted by some white racists. And so we decided to do what other people do. We had a demonstration, we had a protest. And I'll never forget that day. I was there with some of the imams and some of the people, and we were protesting, we were marching. And you know that usually when you march, you know, you have some slogan. And we were saying, racism must end, racism must end, racism must end. Imam Talib stopped us. Talib Abdul Rashid, the Imam in Harlem, Masjid of Islamic Brotherhood. He said, don't say racism must end. Say, we must end racism. How are we going to do it? And this is my conclusion. There's only one answer. One answer and one answer only. And it is our niyyah, it's our intention. I read the words of the greatest historian of our modern time, Arnold Toynbee, and this is what he said. He's a non-Muslim, and he wrote a 12-volume book called History of the World, and he said this: the solution to all international conflicts lies only in embracing Islam en masse, because Islam is the only religion that can transcend nationalism. I see with great dismay that nationalism is gaining grounds even among the bearers of the Quran. I will hope for the day when all of us, humanity, will break this idol and unite as the children of God. What's the answer? Da'wah. What's the answer? Going to the people and teaching them, not against racism. Yes, racism is wrong, but the key, the absolute key, is teaching them about their relationship with Allah. And what Allah says, go, that's the key. They may never accept Islam. وَمَا كَانَ لِنَفْسٍ أَن تُؤْمِنَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. Allah said no one can believe except by His permission. So your job isn't to make the people believe. That's up to Allah. But your job is to call them. And let me show you the proof that this works. The proof, the absolute proof that this works. The way it's done, you know, when you look at Prophet Jesus, peace and blessing be upon him, he was the prophet of miracles. You know, sometimes, you know, Muslims, they're so silly, they want to out-miracle the other prophets. Jesus raised the dead by Allah's permission. Jesus cured those who had leprosy by Allah's permission. Jesus cured those born blind by Allah's permission. And the prophet said, the prophets that came before me were given miracles by which the people believed, but I was given revelation. The Quran is the miracle. You know, how many Muslims believe that Jesus raised the dead? I do, we all do it. Even though we didn't witness it ourselves, we believe it because it's in the Quran, and Allah called the Quran musaddiqan lima bayna yadayhi min al-kitab. It is a confirmation of the scripture that came before. So Muslims, we believe in the miracles of Jesus, but the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, what he have? He have the Quran. They had a drug problem 1400 years ago. And how did Allah deal with it? The same way we're going to deal with racism is the same way Allah dealt with it 1400 years ago. They had a drug problem. They had alcohol problem. They had, you know, even after Muslims, people became Muslims, they're still drinking. And you know what? If you study the history, the first 13 years in Mecca, Allah never mentioned once in the Quran anything about intoxicants. Nothing. 13 years, Allah don't even mention it. 13 years, and yet they had an intoxicant problem. After 4 years in Medina, finally for the first time, so that's 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years, no mention of a major problem. Allah finally says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عن الخمر وميسر. Ya Muhammad, the people are asking you about intoxicants and gambling. Let's stop there for a moment. It's not even Allah introducing the topic. It's not him, initiating it. He's saying, because they're asking about it. But the question is, why they're asking about it? Because you know why? Allah is dealing with it, but He's dealing with it in a way that you don't even understand it. Here's my proof. After Allah says they ask you about it, say in it is some benefit. There's profit. There's profit in drugs and alcohol. There's a profit, but the sin is worse. And then Allah reveals Muslims can still drink it. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تقربوا الصلاة وأنتم سكارى حتى تعلموا ما تقولون. All you who believe, do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated until you know what you're saying. He didn't say you can't do it. But now the Muslims say, you know what? I'm going to make salat in a few minutes. I can't, let me not drink now. You got to make prayer 5 times a day. Let me not drink now. But Allah still didn't prohibit it. And then Allah finally reveals, فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. Leave it alone to be successful. Anas ibn Malik, radiallahu anh, he was serving the Muslims alcohol. And then there was a commotion outside. He went out there and found out that there was a man who said that Allah has revealed in the Quran that now alcohol is prohibited. And once that was done, they began to pour out the alcohol in the streets of Medina. And that's the key. You see, brothers and sisters, you got to put first things first. We, people in general, have majored in the minor. And don't get me wrong, racism is a big issue. But racism isn't the biggest issue. Alcohol is a big issue. Drugs is a big issue. The people of the earth spend more money on illegal drugs than they do on food and clothing and shelter and health and education. Drugs is a major problem. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows how to solve the problem. In 23 years, Daniel Pipes mentioned that. Look at the magnificent transformation of Mecca. He solved many problems. Here's the key. This is the key. And this is what I'm going to recommend that we do to fight against racism. No, not just racism, but everything. We minor in the major. The thing that we should do, priority, most important, we put last, as if it's insignificant. Oh, dawah. This is, let Imam Siraj do the dawah. Let Imam Inshara, let them do the dawah. Let Imam Shamsuddin in Rochester, let them do the dawah. Let those people do the dawah. I will just be a common, regular Muslim. The Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, sent Mu'adh to Yemen. He said, فَيَكُنْ أَوَلَ مَا تَدْعُوهُمْ إِلَىٰ أَنْ يُوَحِدَ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى. Let the first thing that you invite them to, listen to the word, invitation, da'wah. Let the first thing you invite them to is the oneness of Allah. If they understand that, if they get it, if they get that message first, then, only then, inform them Allah has made incumbent upon them to pray 5 times a day. And if they pray 5 times a day, then let them know Allah has made incumbent upon them to give this thing called zakat, to give this thing to help the poor, to take some of your wealth to give to the poor. That's the issue. First things first. I give you another example. Imam, a few years ago, I was in a masjid and I did a program. And when the program was over, 3 young sisters came to me, looked like about the age of college. And they said, Imam Siraj, can you show us in the Quran where we should wear hijab? Why we got to wear hijab? I don't want no hadith. I want the Quran. I said, fine. I know where I go to the Quran and show you where Allah says that cover. I can show you that. But instead of doing that, Imam, I asked the question. I said, sisters, do you pray? Do you pray? They said, no, Imam, we don't pray. I said, do you find in the Quran verses you should pray? Many verses. I said, if you find in the Quran many verses you should pray and you're not praying, what make you think if I show you one verse from the Quran that you should cover, you start covering? You see, their problem isn't covering. Covering is a symptom of their real problem. No, it's not that. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us symptoms. Symptoms are great, but symptoms aren't the problem. Symptoms are an indication that there is a problem, right? So you got high blood pressure. High blood pressure is problematic. It can hurt you, but that's not the problem. Low blood pressure isn't the problem. Headache isn't the problem. Stomach ache isn't the problem. Chills aren't the problem. These are symptoms. And so people, they work on symptoms and they don't deal with the root of the problem. A brother in my community, Imam, came to me once and said, Imam, I take 29 different medications a day. 29 different medications a day. And those 29 different pills that he takes doesn't solve the problem. It might camouflage the symptom, but it don't deal with the root of the problem. There's one root of the problem. If you solve that root, you solve all the problems. This is why a man who came to the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, complaining that his brother had a stomach ache. That's the problem, right? But you want to solve the problem, not camouflage it. He said, Isqi asalan, give him honey. Why give him honey? Because honey is a shifa, it's a healing. And so the man, he took the honey and he was cured. And the Quran is the shifa for what is in the hearts of man. The key is you got to turn the people to Allah. Make them love Allah. Not your leaders, but Allah and His messenger. If you do that, and when Allah say, do this, you're going to do it. That's why Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, subhanallah, this woman, may Allah bless you, the mother of the faithful, she said, had Allah first revealed, do not drink alcohol, the people would have said, we ain't never given up alcohol. We ain't giving it up. Indeed, Allah is wise. He's Al-Hakim. He knows how to do it. He don't just come to the people right away and say, thou shalt not be racist. No, no, no. He puts the foundation first. Someone asked the question, how long will the building stand? Answer, how strong is the foundation? And if you put the foundation of faith in the hearts of the people and the love of Allah and His messenger, you solve the problem. Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, he had an issue. He called Bilal, a derogatory name. But by the way, the name that he said to me was like, okay. He said, you are the mother, you're the son of a woman. Okay, and? When he meant it in a negative way, and the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said, you still have traces of jahiliyyah. You still have some trace of ignorance in you. And so, alhamdulillah, Abu Dharr, he got rid of it right away. He recognized the Prophet said it, khalas, khalas. So that's my talk, Imam. We have to trust Allah. Trust the messenger, trust the Quran, trust the Sunnah. And I would like to see, one thing I learned from the Black Lives Matter movement is that these people, people don't realize that Black Lives Matter, they have an agenda. They got an agenda. And we have an agenda too. And I'm not putting down my agenda. I'm not putting down my agenda. Because the problem is, because again, racism is one problem of millions of problems. But if you go to the root, and the issue is Allah. Submission to Allah. Wallahi, that's our mission as Muslims, to establish this deen and do da'wah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, Imam, for having these programs, and I thank you for inviting me, and I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can begin to do our work. And Imam, I know you're a man of da'wah, and so let's get busy. And I intend, Imam, to go around America like I never did before, and around the world, inshallah, and put the priority back where it belongs. Now, 1,800,000,000 people follow Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the key. And there's a lot of people, 1,000,000,000 people, Imam, waiting for us to come to get them. And we have to pledge to do that and put the resources to do that. The same way that Muslims spend billions of dollars to build masjids, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, and building Islamic schools, we should, but we spend nothing on da'wah, and that has to change. And you'll see, America will be a better place as a result of us doing the da'wah. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Alhamdulillah.
That's it, Imam. I'm finished. I'm done.
Jazakumullah khair.
Thank you, Imam.
We have about 15 minutes or so.
Okay.
For questions.
Okay.
All right. Hassan, does anybody hit you with questions?
Yeah. There's one. I'm sorry for the first question that just came in right now. What would policing look like in a nation that followed everything in Islam, and how can these policies be implemented in America to reduce police brutality and discrimination?
Yeah, it's about informing people. Think about this, right? Every masjid have two doors. It has a front door by which people become Muslim. Who came to that front door? Imam Inshara, Imam Siraj, Imam Shamsuddin, Hamza Yusuf, Zayd Shakir, Abdul Hakim Quick, Abdul Hakim Jackson, Bilal Phillips, Suhaib Webb. Name all of those people who come to the front door of that. How we become Muslim. All those leaders that you respect who became Muslim, they came to that front door. And every masjid, every Muslim organization have a back door by which people leave the fold of Islam. It's the job of the imams, open wide the front door and close the back door. But we haven't paid attention to it. I want to tell you the truth. I say this all the time, and sometimes people get upset about it. But if you study, the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said, "Khairu ummati qarni, thumma alladhina yalunhum, thumma alladhina yalunhum." The best of my ummah is my generation, and then the generation that follows it, and then the generation that follows it. If you look at that first generation, all of them were converts. All of them. You know, when you read hadith, and Aisha radiallahu anha, Ummi Mu'mineen, Ummi Abdillah. Aisha, the mother of the faithful. Because Allah said in Quran and called the wives of the Prophet your mothers. She's our mother. And she's called the mother of Abdullah. What do you mean the mother of Abdullah? She had no children. Abdullah was the daughter of her sister, her nephew. He was the first Muslim born in the ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. The rest are converts. Our job is to go out and do the sunnah. We don't see, we do everything else but that. I just repeat myself again and again, over and over again. We have to change the mindset of the Muslims and bring the people. You see, the majority of Americans may never read one verse from the Quran, not one. But every American have some interaction with Muslim. Either schoolmates, classmates, neighbors, business relationship. And though they may not read one ayah of Quran, if we are like the Prophet and we carry the message of Quran, then we can have an impact. Look how many people took Shahada right now. How many Americans have taken Shahada, and a lot of people becoming Muslims not because of us, despite us. So I'm just saying again, go back. We got to go back to basics.
Rami, would you like to make any comments, or Brother Inshara? Or Imam Inshara?
I have one question.
Please, Imam.
What should be the approach of working with other groups without compromising Islamic principles?
Excellent question, Imam. Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked me. You know, the Muawiyah, he said, "La hakima illa du tajiba." There's no real wisdom without experience, right? So last week I was with Ibrahim Rasul, subhanallah. Ibrahim Rasul was the former South African ambassador to the United States. He stayed here for like 7 years. And, you know, we talk about Nelson Mandela. We love him. We love what he did. Alhamdulillah. We talk about Nelson Mandela being in prison for 27 years. Ibrahim Rasul, a Muslim, was in prison for 20 years fighting against apartheid. 20 years. When Nelson Mandela became president, you know, he had like 9 Muslims on his cabinet. Can you imagine the cabinet of the President of the United States of America having 9 Muslims in the cabinet? The Muslims in South Africa are less than 2% of the population. When Nelson Mandela became president, there were 17 Muslims in parliament. What am I saying? Ibrahim Rasul taught me a valuable lesson. He said, you have to define your relationship with people. He said, for instance, sometimes we can fight over an issue, short-term relationship, maybe partnership, whatever you want to call it, nomenclature, that's not important, right? So fighting against, for instance, when we saw George Floyd murdered, that's an issue. We want to bring that to the attention of the world. And we may march with anybody. It's an issue. It's not compromising our faith. It's an issue. It's not the time there to talk about our values. Number 2, he said, objectives. The objective, we want to fight against police brutality. We want police reform. We can work together with people. So what do you want to call it? Coalition, whatever. These are words. He said, and the last one for us is common value. There we don't compromise our faith because we're there. This is our values. This is what we believe in. We don't believe in this, and we're fighting for our values. So we have to, the Muslims have to be mature enough. Imam, there's an organization called the Congressional Black Caucus. The Congressional Black Caucus are African-American legislators who work on behalf of this constituency. And the motto of the Congressional Black Caucus is black people have neither permanent friends nor permanent enemies, just permanent interests. So sometimes you have to look and have some kind of relationship with people. You don't have the same religion. You don't have the same value. But there are some things that we can work together. And I think that's the kind of way we should think about it, Imam. I think it's an excellent question. Thank you, Imam.
Imam Siraj, I have a couple of sisters that asked a question, so I'll group them together, inshallah, because of time. But the first thing, there's a sister named Rahim. Her said, she was just mentioning that her son, Osama Rahim, in Boston, was murdered by the police and FBI over untrue charges. And, you know, her and a couple of others are speaking out against injustice and evil. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen her, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, grant her son the highest level of paradise.
Ameen.
Sister. And then there's a question that was asked, how do we focus on racism outside of the Muslim community while Muslims are being traumatized by racism within the Muslim community? And it goes with another comment that was made also, is that when we give da'wah and the people come and go to our masajid and they're met with racism, when they're black, that racism needs to be given to the masjids and the Muslims too.
I think we should, you know, and this is a good opportunity for a lot of Muslims who don't know about Black Lives Matter, you know, and I want to say this to our Muslims who ever listen to, especially our immigrant brothers and sisters. When a black person, either Muslim or a non-Muslim, say to you, Black Lives Matter, your knee-jerk response is to say all lives matter. And when you say all lives matter, although it's a truthful statement, but it is a slap in the face, because when a black person says all lives matter, it's a summary of what they're really saying. They're saying all lives matter too. Black lives also matter. And if all lives in fact mattered, you don't have to say Black Lives Matter. So it is a learning curve for all of us. I think that now is the time for many of our immigrant brothers and sisters maybe never step foot in a masjid that is dominated by African Americans or African American imams or African imam. So now is the time to educate ourselves. As I said in my opening remarks, that knowledge is the most important thing, and because some Muslims have been colonized by the same people who colonize black people. So education is the key. Yeah, there's some problems, but I can tell you one thing: there's a difference between having a racial attitude than using a whole system to deprive people. Like you can't get a job because you're black, a certain job, or you couldn't go to a certain school because you're black, or you couldn't drink from a water fountain because you're black. There's a major difference. So educate ourselves. Yes, there's some issues. Yes, I admit there's some issues that we have to work on within the Muslims. We have to get rid of the internal contradictions.
I do want to mention, you mentioned dawah, and for everyone listening, here at TMC, we, Imam and Sharah, Dr. Ami, others, like our main focus has been dawah, and mashallah, they have brothers that go to the prisons, and they can't go now because of the COVID-19. We recently opened a spot at the Tampa Mall, where we have a dawah spot every Tuesday through Wednesday through Sunday, from 10 to 7 p.m. And they actually give us a place where we can pray and also pass out pamphlets and Qurans about it. And also, we also have a couple other dawah projects. So everyone who's inshallah listening to this and wants to be involved in any way possible in supporting the dawah project, let us know, inshallah. And even Brother Sharah was thinking about, I think for the prisons, that they can do it through, I think, electronically. Hopefully that can get approved soon, inshallah, in the near future. So I agree.
Let me say one quick second. Let me add this to it. We all talk about Malcolm. Malcolm was a great example. Alhamdulillah, may Allah give him Jannah. All the da'wah that he did, right? Think about where he came from prison. Just for your record, every year between 35,000 and 40,000 inmates take Shahada. So we have, so it's good. Imam, may Allah bless the Imam and the brothers in the masjid there for the work that they do. Da'wah, may Allah bless you and make it be a great benefit, inshallah.
Inshallah. So we have about 5 minutes. If anyone wants to make a comment, Dr. Ram, if you want to say something, or anybody, inshallah, or anyone who's listening, you have comments, inshallah. So we'll give anyone feel free to.
I thought I was going to hear from Imam Shamsuddin. I actually came there, wanting to hear from him. I want to hear something from him. He came all the way from Rochester, so he came from Rochester all the way to Tampa, Florida. All the way north to all the south. He got to say something. Imam, you got to say something.
Is he still here?
Imam Shamsuddin, are you here? He was here for the most part. I don't know if he logged out last.
All right.
I don't see him, Sheikh.
Okay, no problem.
Imam there's a question about, I think it's happening, but can you elaborate? Is there any da'wah being given to the women in the prisons?
To women in prison?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. There are a number of sisters that are doing it. It's Aisha Prime and others who go to the prison. They are. We know them. Alhamdulillah. We can always do more. We should start training ourselves. It's one thing to do da'wah, but another thing to be trained as da'i. And in a more organized way, inshallah. But it's done in a systematic way, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. And I think in Tampa, I know in Ocala, there's sisters that are involved there in the prisons there. And I know they usually have the iftars for them, for the sisters during the month of Ramadan. This year, they actually provide it. In Tampa, we don't have actually something yet for the sisters in the prison. But any sister who wants to get involved in that, inshallah, we can link up with Imam Sharah and get it rolling, inshallah.
Inshallah, we have to connect to the sister in Ocala, Sister Nadia Abdul Qudus. She's also from New York, Imam.
Yeah, I know, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, Brother Mahasan, rahmatullahi alayh, his wife. We can tap, her resource, inshallah ta'ala, and see how we can go about servicing the people, inshallah.
Imam, let me help you get a budget because it's resources. And resources, it makes a major difference. So what I'm trying to do now is the opportunity for us to get together with other communities who want to do something, who say, you know, what can we do? You can give us some resources to help us do this work. You know, in the Super Bowl, it's a big gathering of people. I forget, maybe 100 million people, they watch the Super Bowl. And companies pay $5.5 million for 30-second advertisement to get to those masses of people. So the more money we have, the more we can, you know, show and implement our programs, inshallah. So we need resources, inshallah.
Inshallah, we'll touch base on that.
Okay, man.
Last question, Imam, if that's okay. That's someone that's
Yes, of course.
So somebody's saying, how do we take the lessons from tonight? And as a Muslim contribute to anti-racism efforts at our workplace with non-Muslims, colleagues, what are the different levels, aspects we can approach this, not just to talk about anti-racism, but also do da'wah concurrently as well?
I am a person who believes in working in jama'ah. Every Muslim should be part of some jama'ah, some masjid. Go to your masjid, go to your imams, go to your leaders, go to care, go to ICNA and MAS and these big organizations and MANA and say, listen, we're here, we want to learn, we want to do something. How can we get involved? As an individual, the best thing you can do is work with those who are already doing it, those experienced. Imam Inshara is one of the most experienced Muslims in America. So you have in him and other imams and leaders, people we can talk to, we can consult with, and we can learn from, and we can all work together, inshallah.
Inshallah, may Allah make me better than what you think I am.
Alhamdulillah, Imam. Thank you so much, Imam.
Alhamdulillah. So Sheikh Imam Siraj, Jazakallah khair for tonight, and all those who joined, I read you. Would you like to make any closing remarks as we conclude, inshallah?
No, man, you want me to talk more? You didn't have enough of me. You want more? No, just may Allah bless you, brother. May Allah bless you and the Muslims in Florida. May Allah protect all of you, and make us better.
Allahu Akbar.
Inshallah.
Ameen.
Jazakumullah khair, everyone. Jazakumullah khair. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. For anyone who wants to recording, it is recorded on Facebook, and also we have the other recordings that you can go inshallah and see later. Anything that was said was right from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and forgive us for any shortcomings.
Ameen.
We'll see you guys next week inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum.
Thank you.